If you have plans to invest in a solar energy system, don't expect to receive a tax credit from the state of Louisiana.
The Fox 8 defenders have learned the amount of claims already paid and under review is more than what's even available for the remaining life of the program, which ends next year. As Shelley Brown reports, it's possible some people who installed solar panels before the law changed will not receive refunds.
On a hot July summer day, solar panels lining the roof of Crystal Viator's Belle Chase home soak up the sun.
I've seen big changes in my electric bill.
Last summer, she invested in a solar panel system, new windows, and new insulation.
In the summertime, I would pay like a $275, $350 light bill, you know. And
now what do you pay?
Now it's like 20 bucks.
She's reaping the benefits of a more energy efficient home, but says she took out loans to finance the $25,000 solar panel system, expecting tax credits eventually would cover 80% of the cost, 50% from the state, 30% from the federal government. Viator says she filed her state tax return claiming the solar credits in February.
So 5 months later, what do you have?
I have bills in there that are fixing to mature.
She hasn't received a penny from the state and worries what'll happen when her loan matures this week.
I really don't know what to do. Do I take out another loan to pay this loan off? I mean, do I file bankruptcy?
The Fox 8 defenders have learned she's not alone. Kevin Harvey got solar panels installed on his Ponchatoula home in May of 2015.
They outline it for you, and then they tell you what you owe. They tell you what you're supposed to get back from the federal, and they tell you what the state owes you. And that is a guarantee at the time I bought the system.
By phone, he explained his federal refund was deposited right away, but like Viator, he's received nothing from the state. The Fox 8 defenders have learned lawmakers made changes to the solar tax credit program a month after Harvey got his system. Act 131 became law June 19, 2015. By July 1st of last year, the State Department of Revenue published a bulletin about it. The new law established a credit cap, essentially the maximum amount of tax credits that may be granted in a fiscal year. And for solar systems that were purchased, not leased, credits are required to be granted on a first-come, first-served basis, based on the date the tax return is filed, not on the installation date. And that's an important distinction.
Crystal Viator and Kevin Harvey, for example, whose solar systems were installed before the new law created those credit caps, may or may not get refunds. When they filed their returns earlier this year, there was no way of knowing if they met the cap.
The Louisiana Department of Revenue tells Fox 8, as of June 30th, we had issued $9.38 million in solar energy system tax credit refunds out of the $10 million eligible for payment under the 2015-2016 fiscal year cap for purchased systems. LDR says the remaining refunds available under that cap will be issued this month. And taxpayers whose claims weren't eligible for payment under the current cap are being notified by letter this month whether they are eligible for deferred claims under the next fiscal year cap. After the $10 million cap for this fiscal year and the next one, the amount of solar refunds granted by the state drops down to a $5 million cap before the program ends.
But they should have done it in a more humane, considerate way by at least giving people notice before they went out and made such a big investment. Because for most people, Shelley, $25,000 is a huge investment. That's a car, you know?
Tulane law professor Joel Friedman says it's unfair, but not necessarily unlawful.
But unfortunately, this kind of application of the law is not unconstitutional, which would be really the only challenge you can make to a state statute. There's nothing in the state constitution that would prevent it. There's nothing expressly in the United States Constitution that would prevent it.
Crystal Viator and Kevin Harvey don't know one another, but both now face tremendous stress.
I was assured that the money would be there when the loans became due. Yeah. More than one time I was assured that the money would be there before the loans became due.
Because they're taking money out of my pocket and off of a promise that they made You know, like I said, law is law. And if they choose to change it after and make it effective for the whole year, then shame on them.
Although both families filed their solar claims very early, they're unsure whether they will be included in the tax credit cap. If they don't get refunds, they'll be left paying a lot more than half the cost of their solar systems. The loans that are about to mature come with substantially higher interest rates. For the Fox 8 Defenders, I'm Shelley Brown.
If you've got a consumer issue you want to address, call the Fox 8 Defenders, staffed with volunteers from the National Council of Jewish Women, or fill out our online complaint form at fox8live.com.
A New Orleans law firm files another class action lawsuit in the wake of what some call devastating changes to the state's solar panel tax credit program. This latest suit centers around the credit company consumers use to finance their solar systems. Here's our Fox 8 Defenders follow-up tonight.
Some of these consumers are talking about possibly declaring bankruptcy. They're on a fixed income. They are taking out home equity lines of credit in their house to pay off this finance agreement.
New Orleans attorney Larry Santola filed a class action lawsuit last Friday against Green Sky LLC and SunTrust Bank, Inc. It alleges Louisiana solar companies acted as Green Sky's agent when they presented consumers with 18-month interest-free bridge loans by Green Sky, a partner in the loans with SunTrust Bank.
The finance agreements that were signed were interest-free for 1 year. And some of these consumers were promised by the solar company, don't worry, because when this when this finance agreement comes due, you will have your tax credit from the state, so you can take your tax credit money to pay off the finance agreement.
The suit claims rather than being interest-free, the loan with Green Sky actually incurred interest from the moment of purchase, an interest rate of at least 17.99%. But if a consumer paid off the loan within 18 months, the interest adding up over all of that time would be waived.
These consumers thought they would have money from the state tax credit to pay the finance agreement. Now they don't, and now they owe a considerable amount of interest that they thought that they wouldn't owe. So that's where the panic sets in.
Panic did set in July for consumers Kevin Harvey of Ponchatoula and Crystal Viator of Belle Chase.
I don't know. I really don't know what to do. Do I take out another loan to pay this loan off? I mean, do I file bankruptcy?
Over the summer, the Fox 8 Defenders reported both consumers took out loans to finance solar panel systems, expecting tax credits from the state would cover half the cost.
They outline it for you, and then they tell you what you owe. They tell you what you're supposed to get back to the federal, and they tell you what the state owes you. And that is a guarantee at the time I bought the system.
But we learned lawmakers made significant changes to the state's solar tax credit program mid-year, after Harvey, for example, got his system in 2015. They capped the amount of credits that could be granted in a single fiscal year. The changes also required credits to be granted on a first-come, first-served basis, based on the date the tax return is filed, not on the installation date. Over the summer, it was uncertain whether Viator or Harvey, whose solar systems were installed before the new law created the credit caps, would even see a refund. After a long wait and a lot of stress, both say they finally got refunds. But Santola estimates hundreds of other consumers across the state won't get the credit because cap limits were met before many claims were even filed. Instead, they're facing maturing loans with high interest rates.
Alleging deceptive practices and a violation of state and federal law, the suit says solar companies, while they were aware state tax refunds were not guaranteed, continued to promise the tax credits, giving consumers an incentive to invest and enter into what it calls onerous finance agreements.
The suit spells out Green Sky is vicariously liable for the acts and omissions of its agents, the solar companies. Meantime, Santola says his firms heard from nearly 100 Louisiana families in reference to a separate class action suit against the Secretary of the Department of Revenue.
But our suit against the state is that the people that purchased prior to June 19, 2015 had the right, and the state subsequently took it away from them.
Centola says the state's measure to cap the solar energy tax program mid-year was an unconstitutional taking of a vested property right.
Now, we've reached out to both defendants in this latest lawsuit, Green Sky and SunTrust Bank, but have not yet heard back. While solar companies aren't named as defendants, they are mentioned a lot throughout the suit. The president of Gulf States Renewable Energy Industries Association, the trade group which represents solar firms in Louisiana, tells us resources are available to taxpayers online, and we've got a link to that on our website. Jeff Canton also says taxpayers affected by the credit change have a limited time to file an appeal with the State Board of Tax Appeals. For many, he says that deadline is as early as next week, October 14th. If you've got a consumer issue you'd like us to address, call the Fox 8 Defenders staff with volunteers from the NCJW or fill out our online complaint form at fox8live.com.
Also over the summer,
I've seen big changes in my electric bill.
we were first to explain how hundreds of families who invested in the state's solar tax credit program in 2015 would not receive tax credits this year after all, because legislators changed the law mid-year, putting a cap on the amount of money the state would refund. That cap ran out almost immediately. Now, a class action lawsuit's been filed against the State Department of Revenue, claiming the measure to cap the program was an unconstitutional taking of a vested property right.